Hi, today I thought I would give the people with a ProStitcher a few tips on how to put a background design around a piece of applique. So I'm in my simulator mode on my computer here, but this is basically what you would see on your screen of your tablet. And the very first thing that you're going to do is set up an area. So if you have a block that is in front of you on your quilt, you can take your needle to the top one of the corners. I tend to do the top left hand corner, and depending on how square it is, you can either use the 2-corner, or if your block is not exactly square, you could use the multi-point and then make yourself a more accurate outline of it. So I'm going to say here's my first point, and then I'm going to move it. My screen is not particularly big, so I'm going to set it up here. Okay, and here it says now it's 18 inches by 15. Let's go back to what would be a standard quilt block size, 12 and 12 inches. So I'm just typing in there. If you type on your tablet, then you get a little keypad comes up that you can type in your number. But normally you would actually mark those points, and if you're, like I said, if your block is not particularly square, you can actually use the multi-point to give those exact points so that you get the correct shape. Okay, so here's my block. I'm going to add a design, so File, Design, Open, and you can see I've been practicing. So we are going to look in the Handy Quilter Designs for the Stipple 2 pattern. You can use whatever you want as your background design. So it brings it up here. The way that I carry on now is I go to Repeat, and then on the side here I say Fill, and that brings as many full repeats into the area as ProStitch can fit. So you can see it can do basically 2 horizontal repeats, and it can do 3 full ones, and it has its own kind of spacing. So the way that I do it is just to add repeats until it overlaps the block horizontally, so that I know I've got it covered end to end. And vertically, I don't want this space here, so I'm going to work on the gap. Normally on your tablet, you can touch here, and it will bring up that keypad. On the computer, it doesn't. So I'm just going to make the gap smaller by pressing here until it gets to about half, and so that's a half an inch. That looks about right to me. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, but I've still got space around that it's not filled. So in the vertical tab, I'm going to add a repeat here. So I've got 3. If I make it 4 and just refresh here, you can see that, okay, my design is over on the sides, and it's also over on the top and the bottom here. Okay, so I'm going to baseline, so that fixes everything in position as it is now, and going forward, ProStitcher then works on this complete thing as its unit, rather than just one of those little designs that we brought in the beginning. Okay, I want to now get rid of the design that's on the outside. So I'm going to go to Modify, Crop, and then Outside. I want to get rid of what is on the outside. So here is where you have a couple of options. You will see there are lots of green squares and red dots. The green square is a start point, and the red dot is an end point. So the easiest would be to click here on Edges. So you're in the Crop menu, you've clicked Outside, and then you click Edges. So if I do that, you see that those red, the majority of the green starts and the red stops disappear. Let me just baseline it and get rid of the area. If you look at it, you can see there are areas where it stitches straight lines in the edge of the block. So if you've marked your block accurately, that would be in the ditch. But it's not a complete line, because it's just skipping from one, or it's not skipping, it's stitching where possible from one end point to the next start point. So this is one option for you. To show you the alternative, I'm just going to undo, so that brings back my area and gets rid of the edges option. if I'm here, okay, so every red is where it's going to stop, every green is where it's going to start again. You would need to go to settings on the top right up here, and then check your auto jump. Now, auto jump there. At the moment, mine is set at 0. I think it normally would be at 6. That would be your normal default, would be 6. So that means if there is, when it stops, if the start point is within 6 inches, it is going to literally just lift up the needle, move the machine across, and start stitching again. It's not going to make a tie off. It's literally just going to stop stitching, move, continue stitching, if you're within the 6 inches. So I would suggest then that you turn this down, make this 0. But that means a lot of work, because now every time it gets to a stop, to the red dot, it's either going to do a tie off if you have activated that on your machine, or it's going to wait for you to do your own tie off before it will move on to the next start point. And at the next start point, it will do a tie on or wait for you to do your own tie on before it stitches. And you can see some of these, if I zoom in this area here, some of these areas are actually very small. So you're going to tie on here, it's going to stitch about 10 stitches and it's going to tie off there. So it could be a little bit painful. It's going to be time consuming, but it will give you a neater finish. Okay, so if I baseline this option, and again I get rid of the area, you can see on here you do have the red and the greens, but you don't have that dark stitched line or the straight lines where it stitches to join the design. So your edge of your block potentially could be neater, and you could go around afterwards or before and do your stitch in the ditch around that block. Just make very sure if you do this that your starts and stops are secure, that you don't end up with it coming apart. You've got a lot of starts and stops here, so you don't want to have too much weakness in terms of where the quilting is. Okay, so let's go back here, and I'm going to actually just say I want the edges to join. It doesn't want to, so we need to go back a little bit further. There's the repeat, the crop. Can I do it now? Yes. Okay, so here's my block. I'm going to baseline it. So I'm going to say in the outside edges of the block, I don't mind if there's a little bit where it stitches straight. Now, if I had an applique in the middle here, I now need to try and crop that out because I don't want to stitch over the applique. So I need to make sure I've baselined. And then I'm going to get rid of this current pink area. I don't need it anymore because I've already set up that background design. So if we go, sorry, I need to go to area, clear, you'll see that the pink line disappears, but I'm left still with exactly the same shape here. Now I need to move my machine. So I'm going to go get my simulator mode. I'm going to move my needle. So this is what this is doing. And I would place it over the edge or on the edge of my applique design on my quilt. So maybe you've got the little laser light, or maybe you're just good at judging where your needle is going to come. You're going to put that on the edge of your applique, and then normally you're going to choose a multi-point area. So I'm going to make mine very simple, just a triangle. But if you have a curved area, then you need to do lots of different points so that you can get as accurate an edge to your applique as possible. All right, so I'm going to just go with that. If you could end up having 50 or 60 points that you mark if you wanted this to be a curved kind of area and nice and accurate around the applique. All right, let's say that's that. I'm going to then say modify, and we're on the crop again. This time, instead of cropping on the outside, I want to crop on the inside here. Okay, so you can see it takes away the background pattern around what would be my applique shape. And again, I can decide, do I want it to stop and start on each of these red and green points to give me a neater edge to my applique? Or do I want to use this edges button here, which will mean that it will get rid of the red and the green points so it looks nice and neat on your screen. But remember, if I baseline and then I clear my area, there are areas where it stitches in the ditch around the applique, and it could be, depending on the complexity of the background pattern and the complexity of your cutout shape, it could be that this line or any of those lines get stitched multiple times. So you could end up with quite a buildup of thread around your design. So those are the choices that you need to make, but it's the basic way to work around your applique. So remember the steps. First of all, you're going to set up your initial area, fill your background design, baseline everything so that it's in place, and clear the initial area. Then you're going to go back and put in a second area to give you your applique shape. So either, most likely as a multi-point, because applique shapes are not normally a simple rectangle or square. And then modify crop inside. And you're going to decide, do you want to use the edges button that is going to give you this kind of effect, or are you going to go to your settings and auto jump and set your auto jump to 0 so that at every stop and start it waits for you to do your tie offs. I hope this helps you and will get you going with custom quilting and your ProStitcher. Happy quilting!